Yeah, I mean, think about it. Information is key. How else are you supposed to get this information out there? Are you supposed to have like a Craigslist, right? Just long sections, and you've got state by state, and then you click, and I mean, that's not efficient, right? The best thing to do is just to zoom in and get it right there. GIS is a transformative technology, but it's one of these technologies that's so enduring and isn't thought of by most people. It's something no one hears about because it's a back-end technology. It's like, Intel or AMD is powering your chips in your computer. You've heard of it. You've heard of those guys. You haven't even heard of GIS. Most people don't know what GIS is, but it's one of those technologies that's so transformational and still holds so much promise because of the fact that data is sitting in silos everywhere. It's a beautiful thing, and all you really need is long coordinates, right? X and Y coordinates, and you can overlay them on a map. And it's beautiful because then you have a new way of presenting something. So as we're talking
Absolutely.
about, yeah.
And you're going to see it come into you're seeing it come into more of the forefront with this with obviously the boom of Internet of Things, and now that we're going to have long on everything, and as you're seeing with transaction, I was just driving the other day, and you can see that a lot of that data set where that location-based data where you can see your Amazon package, it's because that Amazon vehicle has that the coordinates on that and the lat and long, and it can tell you where that package is. So it boils down to that level of how useful it is.
As we're speaking about technology, tell us a bit about how does a company like yours get access to this data if it's sitting in spreadsheets and or PDFs, right? I mean, I kind of know the answer here, but just let's sort of play with the idea. You saw a problem, right?
Yes.
And it's daunting to realize you're going to have to go through all these PDFs. And so you use technology. How did you use technology to do this, to capture this information?
Yeah, so it was kind of what I'd previously done in Australia, as I pointed out earlier. A lot of that data we were able to just go to the state and get it, and then do the sort of display and the visual and deliver it and make it visually appealing in the UI and focus on that, and also the analysis of that data and give tools to our users to do that. When we looked at the US problem, we came along and go, well, we're going to have to start from square one. There is no place to be able to just get this data in one place, also in the format that we need it. So there's two levels of it. One is how we collect the map-based data, and that is utilizing various sort of OCR sort of OCR technology to be able to do that. It's a little bit further than that, and AI.
And the OCR, optical character recognition.
Yes, but it's a little bit, there's not really a great word for it. We were in new territory for it because there's not so much character recognition. It's a lot of it's vector and raster and lines on a map, and so it's not that. But that's the closest thing that we had to go off, and then from so that's one part of the data set, which is the map-based data set, and then the second part of the data set, which is basically a municipal code ordinance, which is these wordy legal documents that are 1,000-page long. Half of it means nothing. If you're looking up your property, which is a particular zone, the majority of the text in there is of no interest to you, and even the text that might relate to your zone, half of it's not of interest to you. So it's really tackling that with AI as a problem, and that's how we went about it.
Yeah, and it's definitely a big daunting challenge what you're taking on, because there is a lot of integration required. Just to sort of rewind for a second, what we're talking about here is companies like Zoneomics. How do they get all this data? It's pretty much what Google does. It's like Google has these robots that go around the web and they get all this information and they make it relevant to you. Well, companies like Zoneomics are using similar technologies where they'll create a way to automatically create, you could think of it as a robot. There's actual technologies involved here. Called scraping technologies, right? So one thing is, they can scrape websites. They can go in and they can, automatically make sure they download documents. And it's a daunting task because there isn't a global language being used here. Like Google, if you want to rank well in Google, right, and you want to play, and you have to play, because if you don't play, then you're not going to rank on Google. So you have to play by the rules of Google, right? People will redesign their website and make it very SEO friendly. That doesn't really exist in the world that companies like Zoneomics are pioneering, because data sitting in PDFs and it's in disparate places, and also, you know, when something's updated, that's another headache. I mean, when you get to a scale like Zoneomics, and Matthew, please tell us sort of about the scale you guys are at, but I imagine it's very challenging when information is constantly being updated. And no one's calling you and saying, Matthew, just to let you know, I work at the at the county's office, and we just updated the slight modification in this little zip code. I mean, wow, your phones will be off the hook, right? Once you get
yes, that paints like something that we tackle with every day. Is like, and yeah, cities like, you know, it depends on how active the city is, but there you got cities like Los Angeles and New York where they're updating their zoning map monthly, weekly basis. And, you know, obviously they're kind of the easier ones to look after, but it's even more the smaller ones that are like the more challenging. And you're right, so it's updating it, it's also categorizing it. And we also have a unique problem from both a data point of view and a real estate point of view. Is one, we're creating this sort of standardized, like this one place to get this data, but there's only so far we can actually, we can standardize and categorize. We can't go too far with our standardization and our categorization. Or even if when we do, we have to be able to make sure it connects back to the source information. To give you an example, an R1 zone, and we discussed it, or even to the point where a dwelling isn't defined the same. An R1 zone, or what we would call a single family zone in Los Angeles, or sort of, you know, San Diego, is not the same as a single family zone in Portland. So it's you have to, and if you try to standardize it too much and categorize it too much, it actually becomes useless to a investor or a developer, because if we go to you and you just, you know, it's useful looking at things from a macro and being able to see it like for like, but if you're going and making a decision about that specific property, and we're telling you that it's just single family, the same as how you should categorize single family anywhere in America, we're doing you a disservice, and we're not providing you with the information that you need. Because, for example, in single family in Portland, short-term rental may be permitted. In single family in San Diego, short-term rental may be prohibited. So as you can see, you have to be able to keep making sure that the data connects back to what it is at the original source, and with that standardization.
And the challenge of classification is puzzling, because in some ways, if it looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. Okay. But that doesn't apply here, because buildings have a cutoff at some arbitrary point. How many square feet is something, you know, a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom potential? You know, how much of a size of a lot does something need to be? There's, you know, so many areas that are open to interpretation. And if you're leaving that to a machine or AI, it's very difficult, because then you're trying to classify. So it certainly is a meaty challenge.
And you've hit something now. We've had to really work hard with our AI is to get it up, help it through this process of even just the way a code, you know, some codes will say minimum lot area and some will just put MIN lot area, or they just might say minimum lot. And for a human, I'm an urban planner and I go and look up that code, I can instantly make that decision in my head. Okay, yeah, you know, just because in San Diego they say minimum lot area, and in Portland they say minimum lot, and then they use the little symbol there, I can make that decision. But teaching the computer that is a challenge, and was a challenge.
Yeah. And even if you want to try to determine value, I mean, one metric we use in real estate, to the horror of agents, is price per square feet. Okay, I was obsessed when I was, I wasn't in real estate at this point, I was running my startup, but when I was looking at rentals, when I was looking at buying places, I would often be looking at, well, okay, hold on, how many square feet? And what's the price? Oh, okay, so this works out to X dollars per square feet. And I'd look at the agent's eyes and she or he would have horror. Like, that's not the way to do this. You've got to buy something that, you have emotional connection to and is right for you. And I'm like, whatever. They just want the sale. I'm going to be very pragmatic. But the fact is, you can't look at square feet alone as a metric. I mean, I'll give you an example, right? You go to a 2,000 square foot home and another 2,000 square foot home. Well, I've been in some homes and the agent said to me, oh, it says 2,000 square feet, but there's this extra like 600 square feet that's not on the record, or there's this extra room that was done, without code, but you're actually getting a bigger place, or you're getting a bigger garden, and that's not factored in the square feet, but also usability. How much of this square feet is usable, right? And how much of this square foot is occupied by like unusable space because you've got stairways and you've got a really funky layout. I live in San Francisco, by the way, so here you've got very funky layouts. You've got old Victorian homes. I don't live in an old Victorian home. I'm in the financial area where there's more modern contemporary, which is my style. But San Francisco has a charm, and it has these Victorian homes, multi-level, condensed like this, but big like this. And a square feet this way is very different to a square feet, the other way, where it's not upwards, but it's sideways, or horizontal versus vertical, rather. So even land, right? Oh, look at this. There's like acres and acres of land here. Well, hold on. Some of this land isn't flat. Some of this land is on a hill that's unusable, and you'll never bring any pipes through there. And the other thing is, this is a protected area, possibly. Some of this might be protected area, and you can't do anything with it. So this is why a simple metric like square feet is so difficult, and it's a challenge when you're in PropTech as a founder like yourself. And you're like, well, it's a small problem. How do I teach this to a machine?
Absolutely. And then you've just hit on a huge problem there. Like, and if you can find a PropTech, we'd like to talk to them to help us solve some of our clients' problems. But even as you pointed out, that illustration of a rezoning and a new land release or subdivision, if there's certain jurisdictions that it will change whether you have on-site delivery of sewage or energy or some sort of services is actually delivered or it's not there, then you can actually do more dense development depending on the delivery there. And we've actually had a lot of requests for where is there a national database for where sewage and water supply and electricity supply and telecommunications supply is provided, and the next question is, do we do that? And so we're having a good enough challenge dealing with zoning, so hopefully you can find a PropTech out there that's looking at that problem.
Yeah, this is a very exciting time to be in PropTech. Zoneomics is an example of a startup that really is addressing a critical problem and is creating is paving the way forwards, right, for where the industry is going to go. It's sort of like building a highway where cars are going to flow. If you get this zoning data and you get it in the hands of consumers and you make this information that was once put all over the place transparent, you're going to change the pricing of real estate. So why I'm also very excited about real estate too, that real estate does go up in value. Inflation is more real than it's ever as of now, and mid-2021, probably listen to this podcast in 2026 saying, damn, he was right. Prices, inflation's crazy, right? But real estate does go up, and we're living in extraordinary times. And as information becomes more transparent, this is one of those technologies where I really think, fast forward in the future, and you believe that there's so much quantitative trading going on in the stock markets. If you want quantitative trading to be going on in real estate, information like this is going to be critical to allow that to happen. Because for sure, years from now, maybe decades from now, everything will be bought on a real-time basis. Fractional shares of real estate will trade hands very quickly and easily. Machines can look at a plot of land and quickly assess potential value. It will sound obvious to you, like it sounds obvious to you that hedge funds are able to make, massive moves in stock markets, and institutions are so powerful. This is coming to real estate. It's only a matter of time. For this to come and for this future to be in existence, we need companies that are really building the infrastructure layer.
Absolutely. And there's, as you said, there's so many good prop techs out there that are doing that. We're tackling this zone issue, and there are others that are kind of doing different things with that, particularly from an AEC point view, and that's part of actually our business model is we look to partner with, because zoning is so universal in the way that it affects so many different parts of real estate. We know we can't specialize in everything when it comes to zoning. So we want to basically be that base provider of zoning information and be able to, through our API, empower a lot of these new PropTechs that are already there, are coming, to be able to build weird and wonderful things from it, depending on the AEC space or whether it be communication space. That's where we see we like to, lots of partners that we're utilizing our data set to build amazing things from a tech point of view.
Yeah, and the API side is very interesting. And what an API allows is other companies to access that data that you control and have. So they can access that data just writing a few lines of code, and boom, they get that information you've worked really hard to compile and collect. And also this is something about having focus as a founder, right? Doing something that doesn't seem sexy can be extremely rewarding if that's what you do and you do it really well. The boring thing, the zoning stuff, right? Who wants to deal with that? Well, if you make that your core focus, you don't get distracted by all these bells and whistles and building, other products for other verticals, and you just focus on solving this one key problem. Wow, this is a big problem.
Yeah, and that was a challenge for me that really I had to, as a founder, had to really come to grasp with. I couldn't do everything from a point of view, like I couldn't build the best 3D building envelope solution, or I couldn't go out, and I also couldn't go out and do this because you can't do it all. What we had to learn was, hey, it's okay. We're the best at this. We understand zoning. We understand the data. We understand the information. We also understand what the use cases are for it, but we understand that there's lots of other founders out there, lots of other smart companies out there that can take our data and for that particular use case, take it all the way to its fruition. And we can focus on what we continue to do and continue to also empower those companies.
So Matthew, we've got a wide range of listeners, many entrepreneurs as well as people in real estate and interested in moving into PropTech. How can people reach you?
The easiest way to reach me is via email. They can reach me at matthew.player@zoneomics.com. That last name is sometimes a little confusing, so if you just put info@zoneomics.com and CC, they'll make sure it gets through to me. That's the easiest way to get in touch with me, is via my email.
Matthew Player, thank you so much for coming on today's PropTech VC podcast.
Thanks for having me. It was great.